Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the January 13th, 2014 Budget Committee public hearing on the 2014-15 operating budgets for the town of Newmarket and the school district. And we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance at 7 o'clock.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And just for the record, Budget Committee member David Foltz is out of town this week. I think everybody else is here for the Budget Committee. Let me talk a little bit about the process tonight, and then we'll get underway. Town Administrator Steve Fournier is going to do a brief presentation about the proposed operating budget and review the other warrant articles, and then we will open the public hearing, and then we will close the public hearing on the town budget discussion and take about a 5-minute break. And then Superintendent Hayes will do a presentation on the proposed school budget and warrant articles, and then we will open the public hearing on that and close the public hearing. Just so you know that the Budget Committee will be meeting this Wednesday night to vote on the operating budget and the relevant warrant articles. And then the deliberative session is scheduled for February 8th. There is a number of more opportunities for people to participate and comment on this process. I will ask that the warrant article for the school bond, the proposed school bond for a new school, if you could hold comments on that until the school holds its public hearing, which is January 21st at the school, the high school, I believe. Since I think that's probably a better opportunity for people to comment on that particular warrant. So with that, unless there's any comments from the Budget Committee, if I missed anything, Administrator Fournier, if you'd like to do a presentation.
Are we in the firing line?
Yeah. I apologize in advance. My back is going to be towards you because they need to get the mic and also for the camera, so I apologize in advance. Good evening. Again, my name is Steve Fournier. I'm the town administrator, and I'm here to go over the town proposed operating budget that the town council adopted in November and forwarded on to the municipal budget committee in December for review. And this is the budget as amended by the municipal budget committee. First thing I want to go over is what we're discussing tonight, and what everybody usually goes in for with the number is the tax rate. In the current fiscal year, which ends this June, the tax rate is $24.46 per thousand. Just to break that down, the school is the largest portion of the tax rate, which is 61% for the local school and 10% for the state school. The town is the second largest portion, is the next portion, which is 25% of the tax rate, or $6.07 per thousand. And the last is the county, which is $1.02 per thousand, or 4%. So what we're discussing in this budget is this blue portion right here. This is 25%. And this is just a 10-year tax rate comparison. In fiscal year 2014, the tax rate was $22.94 per thousand, and we're now at $24.46. As you can see, a few years ago, we had that spike at $25.31, and then dropped and went up again last year. The line that is the town is this line right here, which, as you can see, remains pretty flat, except again for that 1 year in 2012. It went up and then went back down to be relatively level. And just this is a comparison of where we are with other communities. And I tried to get a cross-section of communities in this area, both by population and just by the labor market. As you can probably guess, that Rye, Greenland, Portsmouth are on the lower end because of the value of their property being waterfront as they are. So Rye is the lowest in this one, in this comparison at $10.97 per thousand. The lowest one that we would get in this area by far would be Newington because of the number of commercial entities that they have. minus, they also don't have a large population, so that would be the lowest rate in the area. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, and I apologize for that. Newmarket falls pretty much in the middle at $24.46, where it's, slightly higher than Newfields, Kingston, and Epping. But on the other side, compared to Somersworth, Durham, and Lee, we're much lower in that situation. Somersworth and Durham are some of the highest in the states at $30.47 and $30.41 per thousand. The Budget Committee is recommending the following budget for a bottom line. $9,060,199, or a reduction of 0.96% over the previous year, or $87,636. In fiscal year 13, it was $9,068,000. Current year, it's $9,147,835. I proposed a budget of $9,224,880,000, or an increase of 0.84%. The council proposed a budget of $9,115,912, or a reduction of 3.35%, and the Budget Committee came in with that figure. And this is a breakdown by the fund. We have different funds that go into the budget. The general fund is, of course, the largest portion, and that is covers the general administration, police, fire, highway, basically what you consider the running of the daily of the town, and that's $6,338,722. The next is the library. The library is an independently governed entity, and the town, basically, we give them a block grant of that amount, and since they were separately elected, govern that themselves. That portion is $303,736. The Recreation Revolving Fund is a new budgetary item. We have divided the administration of the Recreation Department from the programming of the Recreation Department. And the programming is now in the Recreation Revolving Fund. So all revenues that are charged for recreation programming go back to the programs themselves. It does not go into the general fund. So it's now set up more like you would think of a private business, that any monies they get in, they can use to go towards programming. And if some programming may not be making funds, the rec department and myself and the council will be reviewing them to see if it's something that could be subsidized by other programs, or is it something that we'd have to review to see if we should still be doing that programming. This is the first year, so we've been working with the recreation director pretty diligently, and that's that budget right there. Solid waste, that's partially funded by the taxpayers, but also a good chunk is funded through the pay-per-bag system, the orange bags that you purchase. The next one is water, which is $829,062, is paid completely by ratepayers, and wastewater or sewer is $947,896, which is also paid by sewer ratepayers. And here again is just a 3-year comparison of the budget, just in a bar chart form. All this will be placed on the town website, newmarketnh.gov, so you can peruse this, as well as the complete budget at home as well. And just to show the budget by fund, the general fund is 70% of the total town budget. The water and sewer fund is the next largest at 1.776. And then the special and revolving fund. Special would be the library, and the rec and the solid waste is at 10%. So increases. Overall, last year the town implemented a merit pool policy. $50,000 was placed in the budget, and after doing performance evaluations on non-collective bargaining covered employees, we distributed that $50,000. It was actually, we only distributed about 36, and it was distributed as employee salaries after doing employee evaluations. And that is in there, and we did reinstate the pool again. Human resources, we're seeing an increase in FICA of $55,526. That is after auditing the accounts to actually reflect what we have for costs. Healthcare, we're seeing an increase of $67,859. We received a guaranteed maximum rate increase from our healthcare provider, and it was at 9%. We did have some turnover, so we'd had some savings, but that is the cost of the increase. In our liability coverage, we're seeing an increase of $7,493. That actually is less than what we were anticipating originally because we went out and secured a new property and liability insurance provider. Legal is going up $7,500. That's contract. We changed our law firm last year, and we now have it on a set contract basis, and it's going up to $75,000 in this coming year. So, and that's it. We don't have an hourly rate as we used to. Planning, we need to begin working on updating the master plan, and the planning board is requesting $10,000 to begin doing that. It's been a number of years since we've done that, and that's something that we need to do. Information technology, $5,109. Again, we have some equipment that we need to replace, and we've got to put that in the operating budget. Public Works Administration, we're seeing an increase of $18,229. The reason for that was in the past, the Public Works Director's salary was shared between the Water and Sewer Departments as well as the Public Works Department, because in the past, the Public Works Director was the supervisor department head for those as well. The council and I decided this year that we would not have that any longer, and the Public Works Director no longer oversees the Water and Sewer Department. That's an independent department, and as such, we cannot bill part of his salary to that department. So that's now all in the general fund versus the special revenue funds. Roads, engineering for stormwater management, we placed in there $28,000 to begin this project. This is going to be a very large and long-term project for us. We need to begin addressing what they refer to as the MS4, which is analyzing our runoff from into the stormwater drains and what goes in the river and how do we treat that and how do we solve that, and looking for things such as non-point sources of pollution and other situations, so we need to begin engineering for that. So $28,000 is in there. And we are seeing a slight increase in the salt budget of $5,000. Fire, we're seeing an increase in the budget of $37,802. The big one is ambulance billing. In the past, Exeter Hospital would take the money, would take the money and then return a portion of that for us, and they would just take what their fees were for the ambulance portion. They are no longer doing that. We need to pay them, and all this is covered under revenue, but we need to still budget a line item for that expense. So we do need to put $16,000 in there. Again, we do have a offsetting revenue on that, so it's a wash, but we do need to show it as an expense. On-call stipends, we have a $15,000 line item. We are finding that it's more difficult to have individuals on weekends and nice summer weekdays who are volunteers to respond to calls. Just they have things they probably want to do, and so we're trying to offset that by offering stipends to individuals who will be working those times to make sure we have enough coverage. And radios is just our normal replacement schedule. We have $5,000 in there. The next item is the contribution to capital reserve funds. This is so basically our savings accounts. So when we have projects that we need to, we can go and withdraw from there to address those. We're seeing a $10,000 increase in technology. Our servers are starting to get older, and we're starting to put money aside to begin to address that. Police Department, we're seeing a slight increase to capital reserve contribution of $2,744. That's mainly for police vehicle replacement. We're switching our vehicles because of the Crown Victoria has been retired, and we're going to go with a different model. Recreation facilities, we're adding $3,000 to that capital reserve fund. Recreation facilities is to upgrade our parks and fields and those kind of situations. And stormwater management actually is a warrant article, but we are putting in $41,000, that's a typo and I apologize for that, $113 in a warrant article to also assist in addressing that. This is to start the planning of that process. We're going to start putting the money aside, so when we actually have to address it, we'll have the money there instead of having to hit the budget in one fell swoop. Solid waste, we're also seeing an increase of $40,000. Since I've been here in my year and a half, the number one thing I've heard is they want household waste day back, or spring cleanup, so we're putting the money back in there. This is not going, and I want to put this in there, and I'll look at everybody. This is not for this spring. The fiscal year doesn't start till July 1, so it would be the following spring. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that. We are trying to figure out if there's a way we could do something for this spring, but this would be the first, it would be 2015 to have the first year for that. We do have some decreases. Personnel changes in the finance department, we're reducing the budget by $8,260. And I'm also happy to say that our audits are going much smoother, and so we're able to reduce the fees there by $6,250. The town clerk tax collector, we did reduce salaries just through attrition, and that's a reduction of $7,806. And last year we had in there codification, which we're doing that project now, and we were able to reduce $11,300 from there. Human resources, after doing an audit retirement system, we were able to reduce that line item by $36,903. And workers' compensation coverage, we're reducing by $61,934. The reason for that is that we're trying, for some reason, all of our bills or our contracts for our insurance products were not on the fiscal year. Some are still on the calendar year. But we operate on a fiscal year on July 1. So what we're doing is we're only paying a portion of it in this fiscal year coming up, and then we'll pay the remainder to get us onto a fiscal year schedule. So we are seeing a reduction this year. It will go back up in the following fiscal year. It's just a one-time savings situation. Assessing, we're seeing a reduction of $6,500. We have contracted out our assessing services. I guess this is a good time to also let the public remind them that this is the 5th year in our cycle. So we will be doing a statistical revaluation update of all properties in the community this year. That, or commonly known as the revaluation, is this year. By law, by state constitution, we have to do that every 5 years, and this coming year is the year. And the next decrease, debt service. We had on our books a charge of $140,250 that we would take from the general fund and place it into the fund balance every year, because when they built the DPW fire station, they had bonding authority, but they never issued the bonds. They just took the money from fund balance and built the fund, but in return, they had to pay back their fund balance. We didn't understand why we continue to do that, so we just eliminated the fund balance, and the reserve fund balance, and then took this out of the operating budget, so we don't have to pay that every year. It's done. It's over with. So that's off the books. Here's our estimated revenue budget. Revenue budgets are very fluid. We're allowed to amend that when we set the tax rate next fall. So while we say this number now, we try to predict in the coming fiscal year where we'll end up at the end of June 30th, 2015. So remember, when I was writing this budget, it was August. So August 2013, I'm trying to predict what the revenues are going to be in June for 2015. So that's why they give us time to be able to revise that. Our overall revenue budget is a slight decrease. We're at $4,869,586. The general fund revenues are $2,657,006. Basically, what that means is the difference between what the operating budget for that $6 million, the $2,657,006 is what we raise through taxation. The special revenues are $435,622, and the wastewater and water are $1,776,958. That's where probably the biggest part of the reduction is, and that's mainly through the water and sewer reductions in their expenses. So they also have reductions in their revenues, because they're a one-for-one type situation most of the time. The default budget. The default budget is the budget that would go into place if the proposed budget were to fail at town meeting. The way we determine that is by taking the previous year's operating budget, you subtract one-time expenditures, which would be, say, if we had in the operating budget the purchase of a fire truck, which we usually don't because you usually bond that, and you take that out, and then you put any contractual obligations that you would have in there. Contractual obligations could be lost judgments against the town. They could be, we do have a collective bargaining agreement with the police department. That has to be in there, and also other contracts that we have. So the proposed default budget, as approved by the council last week, is $9,105,093. So if the default budget were to go into place, it would actually be an increase in the operating budget proposed of $44,894. So voting no gets a higher budget. It happens sometimes, and it happens a lot when the budgets budgets get tighter. And this is mainly due to changes in salaries of individuals. Because if you take last year's budget and you had an employee making $50,000 and you replace them with an employee making $30,000, you still must budget for the one who's making the $50,000 because that's last year's budget. So that is why that is in there. And there's also just some associated benefit changes that were part of that savings. So warrant articles. The town has 5 warrant articles. One came in today by petition. The first warrant article is a bond for installation of water main on Route 108 for $1,055,000. There would be no impact on the tax rate for this. It would be an impact on the water rates. This is to replace the water line going up to the water tower. That water line is vintage 1890s. And so it's something that we need to look at. They've tried in the past to replace, and we're going to try again. So that's why that's on there. Again, that is paid by the ratepayers and not the taxpayers, so there is no impact on the tax rate. We are going to be retiring other debt, so the debt that we're retiring would offset the cost of debt for the bond, so it would be a wash in that situation. If we didn't have any debt to retire, if we didn't want to do that, water rates would be dropping about 30 cents per, I always get the formula incorrect, so it's cubic feet per whatever on that one. So that would be the reduction. The next is a creation of compensated absence expendable trust. And what we're going to do is take $29,500 from our fund balance, or what people commonly refer to as our surplus, and put this into the fund, so there'd be no impact on the tax rate. What this trust does is that the time of separation for when an employee leaves, this will, instead of going to the operating budget to pay them earned time that they have on the books, like sick time or vacation time, we will go to this fund and withdraw it from there. The number of $29,500 was determined by looking at those individuals who could retire at this point in time and what the liability is for those employees at this time. I believe the actual liability is in the closer range of $200,000 for the entire town. So just to show what the liability actually is on the books. But we know that that would mean we shut down operations to have to pay everybody else, so that's not realistic. This is more realistic for a number. We'd only hit this account if we need to, and we'd only top it off if we withdraw from there. So that's what we're trying to do, is basically building a savings account there. The next is that one I mentioned about the Stormwater Management Capital Reserve Fund. We know we're going to have to address this. Again, the project will be in the hundreds of $1,000s range, probably we're estimating, when it comes to be. So we're beginning to put money aside for that. We're going to be putting $41,113 in this capital reserve fund this year, and that would have an impact on the tax rate of 6 cents. And when I say impact on the tax rate, I'm not saying a tax increase. I'm saying that when you look at that $6.07 that I showed earlier, of that, that's 6 cents of that. And I'll show you why in another slide. The next one is the creation of a 300th anniversary celebration expendable trust fund. I know it's a little off, but 2027 is the town's 300th anniversary. It was brought to my attention that it's probably a good idea to start putting money aside so we can celebrate that year. And by putting $2,000 a year aside till then, we'll have a good chunk of change so we can have fireworks and other celebrations that year. And the one we received today by petition was to raise $5,326 for contribution to Rockingham County Meals on Wheels. This used to be in the operating budget. Prior to my arrival here, this was removed from the operating budget for a reason, so it was left out. We didn't hear anything for a contribution, and so we didn't put it again this year. After the budget was already submitted and it went to the budget committee, they requested, they wanted to have a contribution. So at this point in time, the only way to do so would be through a petitioned warrant article, which they were able to do. They had the 25 signatures, so this will be a ballot question to give a contribution to them. We do have a number of other nonprofits that provide services to the town that we give money to. The rule of thumb for the law is if it's a service that these agencies provide, that if they didn't, the town somehow would have to fund it, then we're allowed to give a contribution to them. And Meals on Wheels would be one that we would have to do that. It's less than a 1 cent impact on the tax rate, so it's not that much on there. But again, that will be a separate warrant article this year. So what's that mean, this whole thing? the tax impact. And again, it's the big thing. I put it up there. This next slide is an estimate only using data as we have today. So it can change between now and next fall. I'm giving you an estimate so you can see the picture. So what does this mean? Of course, there's a microphone on the number, but I don't know how the dot got there. So this is how we figure out what the tax rate is. The gross appropriation for the town is $9,101,312. We then subtract those revenues that we're estimating of $4,869,586. We have to add what we call overlay. That's $100,000. What overlay is that for abatements property tax abatements that we have during the year or judgments made against the town, we need to have a separate savings account from the fund balance that we can pay from there. And that's what overlay is. So it's sort of a legal situation that any money that we don't use goes back into fund balance, though. So we have to add that to the amount. We add the war service credits. Those are the veterans tax exemptions that veterans receive in the community, which we estimate about $175,000, so we have to budget that as a expense. So what we come up with is a net town appropriation of $4,506,726. So then we go and we determine estimate what the tax rate was going to be. So we take what the assessed value of the entire town, which is $744,537,983. You divide this number by that number, and then multiply it by 1,000, and you come to $6.05 per thousand would be the tax rate if everything were to pass in March. This is a reduction in the tax rate of 2 cents over the current fiscal year. What's that mean to the bill? The average home value is $250,000 in the town, and the current town portion only of the tax bill on that would be $1,517.50 annually. The proposed would be $1,500 annually, or a $17.50 decrease for the average annual tax bill for the town portion. And that is the town budget.
All right, thank you, Steve. Now we'd like to open the public hearing for the town operating budget and warrant articles at 7:28 p.m. Sorry, yeah, because somebody, sorry, blinding us.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Very high tech, thank you.
So if you'd like to comment, if you could come to the podium and say your name and address. And if we have a lot of people here tonight, so maybe hold your comments to 5 minutes. If you want to come back up after other people have had an opportunity, that would be great. But you're welcome to come forward and provide input. This would be on the town side, of course.
Hi, Roseanne Quox, Wadley Falls Road, Newmarket. I would like to thank the current town council, the town administrator, and the business office for doing such a great job in trying to keep our taxes down the way they did, showing good responsibility and a concern for the taxpayers. And I'd like to thank the budget committee as well. Thank you.
Alicia Bono, 17 Harvest Way. First of all, thank you all for serving our town. I appreciate it. My question is to Steve. If you could speak in more detail about the technology increases that you guys are going to have in the town. What types of technology are you going to be buying, and what are you replacing?
There are two portions of the budget that you saw in there. One was the contribution to the capital reserve fund. That's to begin put money aside for server replacement. That's going to be a much larger capital cost, so we're just starting to put that money aside. The $5,000 is to start replacing desktops, just the daily use of computers. I know a number of them haven't been replaced in at least 4 to 5 years, and you know, a number of them are still, I believe, on XP. So then that's going to be phased out as well. So it's just trying to catch up for a lot of things that weren't done in the past. And of course, just in the general operation of the town, some computers just die. And we're finding that happening a lot more. We're trying to put them back, you know, piece them back together. But sometimes we're finding also it's a lot cheaper to replace than it is to try to piece them back together. So that's why we're starting to do more replacement of those as well.
4 to 5 years old.
Yeah.
Do people in the back need chairs, or are you folks all set back there? Okay. Anybody else?
Hi, Al Zank, 22 Smith Garrison Road. I also think you folks in the town did a great job in the budget. One of the things that continues to worry me as a citizen on both the town and the school side are future expenses that we may be delaying or not paying attention to. I know the general roads and highway budgets we keep reducing year after year after year, and the work doesn't get done. We had a plan done by UNH to do it, and we keep undercutting their recommendations. I think they had suggested we put together $500,000 a year, and that's the one that it's been cut for the last 5 years. This facility continues to be ignored. Its efficiencies we've talked about for 5 or 10 years as well. Lack of insulation and windows and operating heating equipment and so forth. So I like where we came out. I think we shouldn't walk away from it without regard to those issues that are before us. And the last comment I'd like to make is that a number of us, particularly those members of the Efficiency Committee, have been asking both the town and the school to do long-term forecasts. We seem to operate, or municipalities seem to operate on an annual mindset. What's going to happen next year? They don't, for whatever reason, extend themselves out into future years. I would still like to ask the Budget Committee and the town administrator to work on helping the community understand future costs that we're going to run into. For example, we all know that the New Hampshire retirement system is going to be shifting its burden back to the towns again. I don't know exactly what the percentage is, but I think it's a couple percent is coming back to the towns on the retirement plan. The Affordable Care Health Act, which most of us in business are paying a lot of attention to in our budgets, is something that we should be thinking about, and we should be looking at our budgets. And this isn't a comment on whether our plans are good or whether they're not, but the fact is we all know in this room that the Affordable Care Health Act, because we have, as defined by it, a Cadillac plan, both in our town and in the school, there are significant tax implications associated with that. It's the second biggest line item on our budget, is benefits. So, again, I couldn't be happier with where we are. I would really ask that the Budget Committee, the town administrator, and the school as well, give us a look at the future, because they're not all unknowns. There are a lot of things we do know that we just don't recognize. Thank you.
Hi, Tony Weinstein, 275 Ash Swamp Road. I just have a question about the water main or the water pipe. I know that 2 years ago it was on the ballot, and it was on the ballot for about $875, and this year it's on the ballot for $1.05 million. And so I'm curious what is accounting for that increase in cost, if it's just an increase in construction cost, or if we lost out on some sort of funding. So I'm just curious about that.
I wish my water and sewer guy was here to give you exact answer, but I could tell you mainly it's construction cost increase. We are going to try to get into a lower, we're not going to go to the general bond bank for this. We're going to try to get a lower loan from the state revolving fund, so hopefully that will save some money there. But when you bond, we have to go for the number that we think will be the highest, and if it comes in less, we'd borrow less. So this is the worst-case scenario situation. If we can get grants, it'll reduce it even further, like we were able to get for the wastewater treatment plant. We were authorized for 14.5, we're down to about 10 million we're actually going to have to borrow for, and we'll do the same for this. You know, the main thing for this is to increase replace it, because it's over 100 years old, but also to increase the capacity to 16 inches. So it's mainly construction.
Steve, while you're there, can you just mention the date of the public hearing for that bond?
It is the first Wednesday in February, and I don't have that in front of me.
It was February 4th, is that what you?
I think the 5th or the 4th, so.
Just want to let people know there
Yeah,
will
it'll
be a
be during
hearing
the regular
on
council meeting. So.
February 5th, sounds like. Thank you.
And can I just address what Mr. Zink said quickly? We are doing that, especially for the healthcare situation. The finance director and I have been working in, the first thing that we want to make sure is review the number of hours of all of our employees who are considered part-time. Traditionally, we always went with the number less than 32 hours a week because of the fact that that's what the New Hampshire retirement system considered part-time, so we wouldn't have to contribute to the retirement. With the new healthcare law, that's lower, so we've reviewed and changed the number of hours that part-time employees can work, and we are looking at the other situation with the tax implications for the when the Cadillac plan penalties may go into place. So we are looking at that as well.
Thank you. Any more comments on the town operating budget or warrant articles? Don't see any movement. So we will close the public hearing on the town budgets at 7:37 p.m. Chris would like to have a break in the tape between the two presentations and public hearings, so we're going to take a 5-minute break. Yes.
Could I have Steve clarify something just for the public? More than anything else, more for us. Steve, could you possibly just talk a little bit about the buy down on the tax rate? Because it doesn't really show the difference between the two in the slides that you showed.
Yeah.
So I just want to be prepared so people understand, because one year we did buy down the tax rate quite a bit, and then it was a shock when we got the next bill.
And that is something that we are taking into consideration in the operating budget. Buy down the tax rate is what we use the term use of fund balance. And that is to offset expenditures that we have. We go into our surplus, our undesignated fund balance, and withdraw money to offset that. New Hampshire GFOA and the Department of Revenue Administration recommend that we have between 5 and 10% of the gross appropriations for the town, the county, and the schools placed in our undesignated fund balance. That is in case something happened that we could go there and pay those bills. Because as you all know, the only entity in the community that collects the taxes is the town. So we, no matter what happens, we still have to pay those other two entities. So we need to make sure we have money, or we have some number saved up that we can go to in case of emergency. If the fund balance is over the recommended amount, then we could, the council has the right to go in and withdraw to offset the any tax increases. In the past, you would always hear that done in the fall. So you would see one thing in the budget, and then in the fall, they would change it because it would be withdrawn from the fund balance to buy it down. The council did buy down the tax rate this year, and they used $461,000 from the fund balance. We're at 8%. So we're very healthy. We're good. That's where we should be. We're actually even healthier than that because we're budgeting now the portion of fund balance that we're going to be buying down. So instead of the fall, we're telling you now we're going to be using $404,460 of fund balance to offset the tax increase. We've always done it in the past, but we've done it in the fall, but now we're doing it in the spring. So unless there's some great increase in revenue, which we can offset, that is what the tax rate would be on the town. It's $6.05. So we're telling you today that's what we're going to be using, and we budget that now as a revenue. That's it.
It was more for the public than me.
Steve,
Dana had a clarification question as
I have
well.
a clarification. You went over the warrant articles.
I did.
However, aren't there more warrant articles coming, approximately 18 more for the charter?
You only have the financial warrant articles in front of you. There are 18 charter amendment questions that has nothing to do with the Budget Committee nor the
I
council. That
understand.
automatically goes on.
Right, but how does the public get to know that?
They're on the town website. There's a list of all the articles, and when the town warrant is posted, there'll be 18 separate charter amendments in there
Is
as
there a
well.
deadline to which that has to be done?
It's already done.
Oh, it's done. Thank
Yep.
you.
So,
Thank you. So we're going to take a 5-minute break so the school folks can get set up, and then we'll get on with the school part. Thank you.